everybody after lunch. It's one of the hardest time slots, and I hope that especially those 5 people in the first row won't begin to sleep. If I see that somebody is beginning to sleep, I think we will do some game to get... Is it possible if I just speak louder? Because I don't want to use the microphone. Is it okay for you in the back?
Now, yes.
Now, yes. Okay. If I'm getting too silent, please just raise your hand and I try to be more loud. Welcome to the session ScaleOut with SQL Server Integration Services, which is a new feature with SQL Server 2017. And before I start, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Wolfgang, I'm coming from Austria, and I'm doing data integration. I'm working with integration services, I'm building data warehouses, I'm doing reporting analysis with Power BI and other tools. And I'm here today to talk about the new feature of ScaleOut in integration services. And I would like to thank the organizers of today that they are again organizing a great event for free. And I would like also to point out our SQL Saturday, which is in January in Vienna, which is currently in the phase of setting everything up. We have fixed the schedule. And if you have time, be aware it's actually named the SQL Saturday, but it's a Friday. But it's the same thing like here, and we try to do our best. Also the sponsors, I think everybody has seen the sponsors, and I hope everybody used some minutes to talk with them, because without them we wouldn't be here, we couldn't do those great events. A little bit about the history, but now I talk a little bit about me. I would like to know something about you. Who of you is using SSIS? Okay, but now it's the session after lunchtime. I think we should do it not with hands, but stand up, please. Everybody who is using SSIS. Nobody from the first row. Okay, it's clear. So about the half. And what is the oldest version of SSIS you started to use? I'm beginning with 2005, 2008, 2008 R2, 2012, 14, 16, and who is new? Yeah, 1. So when we are talking about integration services, we are dealing with data integration, and there are many features that came, beginning with the predecessor, which was named Data Transformation Services, DTS, and we got the SSIS catalog with SQL Server 2012 to have a more consistent way of publishing, of writing the logs, of analyzing the logs of the projects. We had the project deployment model. We also had more work in the type of configuration. We had more configuration in the logging and all that stuff. And with 2012, it was the catalog. With Integration Services 2014, it was nothing new. So there was the big question, integration services, are they going to die? And with 2016, we got new features like the control flow templates and incremental package deployment and all that stuff. And with 2017, we also get some new features. And the first one, and for a long time it looked like it will be the only one, new feature, it was the ScaleOut. And that's the topic of today. The second one was announced quite fast. Integration services are now available and running on Linux. So we are able to not only work with SQL Server running on Linux, we are also able to execute integration services or integration services packages on Linux. And there are also some connectivity improvements, additional connectors, especially in the field of Azure services. But before we are getting into the topic integration services, ScaleOut, I would like to talk a little bit about scalability. What is scalability, and how it is defined and what types of scalability we have to deal with. And when I'm starting to look for a new topic or a definition, I just start typing it into a search engine, and one of the first entries was Wikipedia. And it's somehow really good defined. It's not the lengthy definition like you find it somehow on, sometimes on Wikipedia. Scalability is defined for the capability of a system to handle a growing amount of work, or a little bit more simpler, the potential to be enlarged, to work with the growing amount of needed resources. And when we have a deeper look into the types of scalability, for me, scalability, before I got into the topic, was just I need a bigger machine to deal with new or more resource requirements. But there are different types of scalability you have, or you can think of. The first one is when you're dealing with administration. So your system should be defined to work or perform in the kind of administrative scalability. So if you are adding, for example, more users, the system should be able to handle those users. And if you're dealing or looking at the field of functional scalability, you should be able to add new functionality to your system with minimum effort. So keep it in mind, it's not only the power you need for a system to scale, it should only be easy to add more types of scalability. And geographic scalability is another thing we get with the cloud services and all that stuff. You start with your web shop, for example, in Prague, and then you're extending to other countries, and the overall system should be able to maybe distribute some sort of logic into different kinds of areas or regions. And generation scalability is you're implementing version 1, and then you're implementing version 2, version 3, and version 20, and your system should be able to scale and deal with the different versions. So scalability is not only resources, it's also somehow related to programming and architecture stuff. And last but not least, that was the definition I had in mind when I was thinking of scalability, load scalability, to increase and to react to changing loads, to add more CPU, to add a new server to your cluster and everything like that. So there are different types of scalability, and it's the last point the SSIS scale-out is dealing with. And when we are talking and thinking about the load scalability, there are two different types. You can think of vertical versus horizontal scale. And I just would like to explain it to you. We are starting with a system, and the blue part is somehow the resource requirements we are using currently at the moment. And over time, the resource requirements are increasing. And at some point, we are reaching red lights. Yeah? We have a problem because we are using too much CPU, we are using too much memory and everything like this. And then we have the possibility to put more CPUs, more memory into my system. And that approach is called scale up. And if we are removing resources, we are scaling down. And that one is called vertical scalability. More CPU, more memory, and especially in the field of virtualization, you find that kind of scalability approach. If we are talking about the horizontal scalability, we are also starting with our red box in the left upper corner, and then we are splitting all the actions that are required to be performed onto different workers. We call it workers. In that part, or in that example, we have one master server, and that one is responsible to distribute the load to the workers. And as you can see here, the workers can be of different sizes. They can be specialized. For example, when we are dealing with data integration, maybe worker 2 is specialized for extracting SAP data. And that one is good for calculations because we have CPU and memory there. And that one is for CSV files, for example. So we have one master and different workers that can be of different kinds of sizes. So it doesn't really matter if the workers are the same size, if they are dealing with the same topic. So the master has to have some logic to distribute the actions that need to be performed. And that one is called horizontal scalability. And if we need more power, we just add more nodes. Maybe we need a second CSV node or a second SAP node. For the data integration, we just add more nodes. And for the scale-out in the integration services area, we have those two personas. We have the master and the workers. And the master, it's the person that, or the thing, that gets the instructions from the client. The client is the, for example, I'm the client. I want to start data integration in scale-out mode, and I just tell the master, we have integration jobs to do. So the master is the only part in the architecture that is directly working or dealing with the client. And the master itself knows the list of active workers. He knows, okay, I have 2 SAP nodes, I have 2 CSV nodes, I have 1 calculation node. He knows his workers. And he has an overview about the jobs. Which jobs are planned, which ones are currently running, and which ones are finished. So he's the one that makes the checks right on the lines, right next to the jobs. And he knows the current state of work. That's, is the job running, is it finished, did it fail, is it in a retry logic, or something like this. And the workers, they are there and just say, okay, I'm free, do you have some work for me? So they say, I'm free, I want a new job, give me a new job. And the master says, okay, I have a job, and you are able to perform that job, here you are. And they work on the task. And while they are working, they are returning the results. So we have, when we are dealing with integration services, we have some logging, and we have results that are written to tables. So we have the results are returned, and also the work reports, like some sort of progress information or package execution failed or I'm succeeded, something like this. And I already talked about that. They know their profession. So they know I'm able to work with SAP, I'm able to work with CSV files and something like this. So that's the kind of topic and the roles that are dealing with integration services scaling. Are there any questions so far? Maybe I need some motivation, or I have some motivation for you. Maybe you've seen those kind of coupons. I also have some. If you don't need them, I just take them for me, but they are reserved for you. So if there are any questions, ask them now, or ask them during or via the electronic board, or afterwards. 4 coupons are here, 4 are ready for distribution. Are there any questions now? Okay, if you have a question, just raise your hand or stand up. I think stand up is better in the lunch session. Good. How about scale out in Integration Services 2017? We have a master. And we have Integration Services Catalog, which is the central part of storing the configuration, storing the execution information, storing the log information with Integration Services executions. And we have a client. That client is using Management Studio or is using a third-party application which starts a job in order to run in scale-out execution. And we have, or we need workers. With Integration Services scale-out, you can install on one machine the master service plus the worker service. You can somehow simulate Integration Services scale-out, but in order to be really successful and powerful, you need more workers. So we have one master and a list of workers, and we have the SSIS master service that is running on the master node, and we have worker services running on the workers. And those two services are communicating with each other. So worker 1, for example, says, okay, I'm free, I want a new job. And he uses the direct connection between those two services on both sides. Good. How do we install it? It's quite easy, the basic installation, but then the fun begins. With the basic installation, we have, is it too small? Or is it, okay, good. We need to install on the Integration Services Master the SSIS ScaleOut Master Service. And that's just one check mark in the Integration Services or in the SQL Server setup. And that's it for the install process. What we need in addition are some information for configuration. And yeah, we have a service which gets by default a new user account. And what we need, and as a prerequisite is really, really needed in order to function, is we have to define or configure mixed authentication on the server where the integration services catalog is running. That is a prerequisite for the logging. I will come back to that topic. So we need mixed authentication. If you're currently running a server only with Windows authentication, you're not getting back the logging information from your workers. So it's version 1. I hope they will fix it, but currently you need mixed authentication. And what we need is one port where the master service is listening to requests coming from the worker services. So we define a port. The default port for the master service is 8391. And don't forget to open the firewall. Yeah, that was one thing I spent some minutes to find. Both were running, master and worker, but the firewall was just cutting the communication. And for the communication, maybe you remember the blue arrows between the master and the worker services. All the communication between those two services is encrypted. And you can use generated certificates, and you are also able to use your own self-sign certificates. So we have to define the certificates. And certificates is a really, really nasty thing while configuring Integration Services ScaleOut, because, I'm coming to that later, but it can be tricky. What you also need on the master is, in the Integration Services catalog, we need to enable SSIS ScaleOut. So it's just a flag that is stored in the internal table, and you can query the catalog properties, and there you have the option, is it enabled or is it not enabled? And that's all for the installation and configuration on the master. On the worker side, we also have a part in the SQL Server setup. We also get a new user account for the worker service. And what we need on the worker side to be configured is the address, so the master node machine name plus the port where it is running, plus we need the certificate from the master on the worker. And that's the beginning of the funny story, because every machine in the ScaleOut topology needs its own certificate. So we have the master certificate, and we have, for example, 5 workers. So we need 6 different certificates in that communication chain. And the master needs all the worker certificates installed. So we need to grab all those 5 certificates from the workers and install it at the master. And the other way around, we need to install the master certificate on all worker nodes. And during the setup of the master SSIS master plus the worker service, the auto-generated certificates are generated. And what is really, really important is you have to install it in the right place in your certificate store. Because if you don't put it in the right place, the communication is not able to work. So if you are copying the certificates from the worker to the master and you're just doing a double click and next, 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 the certificates are not put in the right place. So on the slide you can see it, you have to put it in the trusted root certificate authorities, and there it needs to be installed that all the communication works. And that approach was relatively complicated before release candidate 1 or 2 of Integration Services 2017. But with the new Integration Services release candidate, we got an enhancement. And I will show you the enhancement of installation and configuration later. Just a few words about the certificate workflow. We install the master service. We copy the master certificate to the worker. We install the master certificate. We install the worker. And with that step, we get the generated certificate, copy and install it back on the master. And what is really, really important, restarting of the services. So we need to restart after the certificate and the installation. With the restart, it works in almost 100%. If you don't restart it, it's somehow working, and not in every case. And you find all the information, the certificate plus the configuration, in the appropriate directories on the master and the worker. And as I mentioned, with release candidate 2, I think, or 1, I think, was a new worker setup experience added. The new, no, it's another topic, I'm too fast. The next setup is really nice, and it's a way to install it. And who of you has seen SQL Server on Linux, the installation? 1. I think it's 2 or 3 commands you have to enter, and then SQL Server is running on Linux. So it's, not 25, 30 dialogues in Windows. It's just 3 lines and SQL Server is running. So if you have a huge number of worker nodes, maybe the next setup is annoying, and you can use the command line interface to install the integration services worker nodes. So you only have to specify here the integration services worker feature, then you have to specify the service account, and you have to specify the address of your SQL Server Integration Services ScaleOut master. And what is really, really needed here, you need the certificate in order to work and configure. And now it's the time for the new configuration experience. With the Integration Services ScaleOut Manager, you get the ability to have an overview about your Integration Services ScaleOut topology, plus with the Worker Manager, which is the second part of the ScaleOut Manager, you can automate the configuration. So you don't need to copy the certificates, install it by hand, and vice versa. You only just go to the Worker Manager, and then you add a new worker, and you add the name of the worker. I think we should do a game. Maybe everybody could stand up for a second, please. Thank you. Now we are here again, everybody. Thank you. It was just for the after lunch session. So, for the installation process, for a new worker, you add the name of the worker node. What you need to do before is you just install the worker binaries, the worker service, without configuration. And then you start the integration services ScaleOut manager, and you have an assistant that does everything. So it copies the certificates, installs it in the right directory, and restarts the worker service. If everything went fine, you just get the information, which is the thumbprint of your certificate, and the worker service is running. And with that, you can check your environment. In the beginning, we have two catalog views that contain the information, one for the master and the other one for the list of workers. So if we query in the SSIS DB the master properties, we get the information what is actually configured. There it is. Is ScaleOut enabled in my integration services catalog? Plus that one was new, so I'm gonna move here to my here we are with the where's my mouse? Here we have the information. We have the name of the master, and we also have some sort of configuration. There's a heartbeat configuration that defines the interval between the heartbeat connectivity checks. So every master or every worker sends a heartbeat that the master itself can or has the information what are my current available worker nodes. So that is the configuration for the master itself. And for the workers, we have the catalog worker agents. And what we get here is one row per registered worker. And every worker has a unique identifier, which is the worker agent ID and the machine name, plus which is the user account that the service is running on the worker node, and we have the last online time. And what is really important is the second column, which is called is enabled. And as you can see here, I have defined 4 workers, whereof 3 are enabled, and the 4th one is a worker where I installed the worker service, plus I did the configuration in the integration services ScaleOut manager. And now the worker itself is, let's do it here. We don't need all the columns. The worker itself is online, so we got a heartbeat 3 seconds ago, but it's not enabled. And what you need to do in order that those workers are able to get tasks assigned, we need to enable that worker. And what we need here is, I need the GUID, and then I need to call the I think it's called catalog in, let's see it here. Where it is, enable worker agent. And we have the worker agent ID. Call it and query the list of workers again. And now we have 4 enabled workers. So that one is really, really needed if you start with ScaleOut and you just do the configuration and you can't execute packages in ScaleOut, you maybe forgot to enable the agent. The enablement plus some configuration should be possible in the integration services manager. And what is really important, you have to start it as administrator. Without administrative information, you can configure it. And here we have the overview. As you can see, we have 4 workers defined, plus the worker manager. And you could do the, sorry. The enablement or the disablement in the Integration Services Configuration Manager. The Configuration Manager itself, if you look at the documentation of ScaleOut, you see red and green dots. In my environments, I tried it 3 or 4 times. I only get gray boxes. So maybe you can figure it out what to configure. I tried to open the firewalls and everything like this. In my environment, those are just gray boxes. But ScaleOut worker managers are running, and it's just a user interface thing. Good. Here we have the configuration. The column is enabled is a really, really important one. And if you are deciding to disable some workers, you can call the disable worker agent method. How do we execute packages in ScaleOut? So what we have here is the default execution mode, which you can define in your integration services catalog. That one is new, and I think it was introduced in one of the last release candidates. And you can define the server-wide default execution mode, which can be either server or ScaleOut. If you define it in ScaleOut, you don't have to define a special parameter when you're starting an execution. And the execution itself is started in the easiest way, just with a right click in your Object Explorer. And what you need to do, maybe I just show it in the live demo. What I have here is my integration services catalog, and I have defined some sample packages. I have multiple packages defined, and I just do the execute in ScaleOut. I just start my dialog, and what you can do here is you can select and deselect your packages. You can configure the packages, you can override connection managers and all that stuff for the packages. You can use or define some advanced properties, and there's one property right on the right side, the retry count. With that option, you can define how many times the package should start or restart if there was an error. And that one looks quite similar to the old execute dialog. But there's one thing that is added. It's the machine selection tab. And here you have the list of defined workers. All 4 are enabled. You have the last online time here. And you can define it either in 2 ways. The first one is, it doesn't matter which worker is running or executing the package. So the allow any worker checkbox can be used. Or if you need a special logic like SAP or whatever, you can define the special worker. That is the one that really is needed for the ScaleOut execution. And what we do here, we don't care which worker is the worker we want to start, and I just put it into the pipeline. And what we can do here is we can have a look at the internal logging information. And the newest one is the first one, and I'm ordered it by the execution ID descending. And as you can see here, we have 3 jobs that are currently pending. There are 2 jobs that are running, and the other ones are over. And here we have the succeeded, failed, and everything like this. And what you can see here is the server name, it's the name of the master. And in the column machine name, we have the worker that actually did the job. So we can do analysis with the execution log, how many workers or what was the most active worker and all that stuff. So we can have a look here, and if we do it again, okay, we see we have succeeded once and we have 3 running ones. And you also see here the integration services worker 1 is currently, no, the frag one is currently running 2 packages. So there's no limit of only running 1 package. The distribution logic got enhanced during the CTPs. In the initial version, it was just 1 job that could be run on a worker. Now we are open, and multiple jobs can be run in the different work. So it's that easy to start the execution. And it's also easy to include it in a SQL Server agent job and mark it, execute it in ScaleOut, and you only start the package and you don't worry where it will be executed. Good. Behind the scenes, there are several steps that are performed when or before starting an integration services package execution. The first step is we have to create an execution. Behind the scenes, it just generates a line in internal tables in the integration services database. And there are 2 new parameters. The first one is the use any worker parameter. If we specify it with false, we have to specify the workers or the list of workers that are able to work with them. If we define use any workers with true, we don't need to specify the workers. The master selects one. And the run in ScaleOut is that one that really defines should the package be run on the master or should it be pushed to the execution ScaleOut. If you define the server-wide default execution mode with ScaleOut, you don't need the last line, the run in ScaleOut. So if it's defined by default, you don't need to define. What you then need to do is you set some parameters. In that case, it's the logging level, or you override a connection manager, or you override and set the value of a parameter of a package. And then you optionally define workers. If you need special workers, you just add a line for every worker. And the last one is you start the execution. It's the start execution sort procedure with the execution ID we created, and then you can specify the retry count. That's all. And how do you do the execution monitoring? I showed you the overview of the monitoring in the integration services catalog. You also have the built-in integration services reports in Management Studio, which basically rely on the same tables. As you can see here, you have an overview, and you can see here we have the worker nodes where the package was executed, and you can go into deeper analysis if you're going into the database, as I've shown you before. How does it work? Because we have 2 different machines, and the execution of the package actually is running on the worker. So we need somehow a mechanism to get the logging information back to the master. And that one looks really nice at the beginning. Yeah? There are some things you have to consider, but on every worker you have 2 different directories where logging information is stored. The agent directory gets the logging information about the agent status. It started, it's not able to communicate with the master and all that stuff. And in the task directory, you have the somehow cached information of the logging, of the actual execution of the package there. That one is an example for the task. directory. There are different logging informations. That one is somehow from the task engine, but also the execution logs from the package execution, like on information, on warning, on error, are stored in another file. And the master itself has also a directory where the overall logging information is stored. And now we need to get the execution information from the worker back to the master. And maybe some of you remember the prerequisite I mentioned for the installation. We need the mixed authentication. We need a SQL Server login because the logging information is not transferred using worker service and master service communication. The logging information is written directly into the SQL Server database or the Integration Services database of that. And what the Integration Services team decided to do is they create a user in the Integration Services database that is able or allowed to execute some internal stored procedures. And those are responsible to log the information into the central database. With a newer version, I haven't tried it, you should be able to change that user. In the older CTPs and all that stuff, it was that user and nobody else could do it. Now you should be able to change it. I haven't tried it. And it works fine if the network is available. So if we have a direct connection between the master and the worker. But there is a problem if the network connection is broken between the master and the server. For example, your package is a calculation package. So it doesn't really need a network connection to your database server. It only calculates. And it calculates for an hour, for example. And during that time, the network is broken. So we have a running package, a successful running package, but no information or no possibility to write the logging information back to the master. And that was a problem during early versions, because if the network wasn't there, the logging information was tried to send to the central database. They retried it 3 times, but with a delay of a second between. So we had 3 seconds of try time frame, and then the logging information was skipped. That changed dramatically in newer versions, so we have the option of defining a wait interval between the logging retries, and now we can define that retry time frame, like for example 10 minutes, so we can have up to half an hour to extend the network break during between. So it really works good, and you almost have immediate feedback in your central database from your packages. So it's the right back to the central database. Good. There are also some new database roles that are created and added to the Integration Services database. You have, for example, a new role, the cluster executor and the cluster worker. And those are specialized and allowed to call different internal stored procedures in order to work. What about the configuration? We have some configuration paths during the setup, but that was only the port and the name of the master and the certificate. But there are more options, and there is the master plus the worker configuration. And that configuration is stored in the same directory where the certificates are generated. And you can edit those. If you edit those and change them, restart the server. That's a really good point. And maybe you have a look at the documentation, the Integration Services documentation, because the list is long, but there are some entries where in the documentation it's written not used today. So for future use, you can try to change some of them, but they have no real work afterwards. Yeah? But what you can see here is, for example, we have the port number which is defined here, and on the other side by the worker configuration we have the address of our server, and we have the thumbprints of the certificates which are stored in the configuration file. So if you change the certificates afterwards, you just have to change the thumbprints in the configuration. And you have some heartbeat intervals, and you can also define the maximum task count, for example, or the maximum CPU count. Not all of them are currently implemented. What you see here is the execution log retry count and the execution log retry timeout. Those are the two settings I just talked about, which extends the delay between the retries if the network is not there. Restarting service is a really good point if the changes should really be available afterwards. When we have a look now at the total architecture, we have on the left side our client. That's me, and I just define I would like to execute some packages in ScaleOut, and those information or those execution informations are stored and created in the SSIS. With the configuration, the SSIS master service knows what's its name, what's the port that is running, and with the configured certificates, the communication between the master service plus the worker service is secured. On the other side, we have the worker service that also has some configuration plus the log files, and here we have the master certificate plus the certificate of worker 1, worker 2 certificate, and worker X certificate. We have encrypted communication between the master service and the worker services, and if we are starting an execution or preparing an execution in ScaleOut on that side, the worker service itself says, okay, I'm free, I'm ready for execution, and then the package information is transferred to the worker, and then the package itself is executed with all the parameters we defined in the execute in ScaleOut dialog, and all the execution is running here, log files are written, and during the execution, the log information is written directly back to the integration services database. And now the big question is, how about licensing? What are your opinions? Is it in standard edition? Is it in enterprise only? Some thoughts? Enterprise only. Maybe we have to divide master and workers. Masters, enterprise only. And the workers, enterprise only. It was a good choice for Microsoft. They decided to license the ScaleOut master only enterprise. Okay, that's an enterprise feature, that's okay for me. But for the workers, you can use either enterprise or standard. There's a small one there, and it's here. If you run a package that requires enterprise-only features, like change data capture or some components that are only licensed and available in Integration Services Enterprise Edition, you need to have enterprise workers. But you can also run workers or licensed workers using a standard edition. And what is really good on that slide is to be defined, to be defined, to be defined. And I think with the SQL Server 2016 Service Pack 1, where we got column store in every edition, maybe within a certain time frame we get the allowance of using, for example, now Express Edition is the question because we don't have integration services in the Express Edition, but maybe we get the allowance of installing workers on other editions like Standard and Enterprise. So we have to wait for another time, because I thought that page was available before the launch of SQL Server 2017, and I checked after the launch, and it's the same. So they haven't decided yet, but it looks good. And with that, I'm at the end of my session, and there's one thing, or to be exact, there are 4 things I would like to distribute to you. So are there any questions about the integration services scale-out? Everything clear?
Actually, I have one question.
Yeah.
Is it able to run one package on multiple workers?
The question was, is it possible to run one package on multiple workers?
Yeah.
You can do it, but you have to start or create 4 executions, for example. So with one execution, it's only going to one worker. So you can't say, run that package on worker 1 and worker 2. If you want to do that, you have to explicitly start it 2 times and then distribute it. Or was the question to...
Imagine the situation I have extremely large table to process, and I want to scale it.
Mm-hmm.
And is it helping in this case to scale it out, this large transformation?
The hint was, or the comment was, he has a very large table, and is it able to scale out? With the current approach, the scale out happens at package level. So no parts of the package, for example, sequence containers or data flows, are distributed. So everything that is one package is executed on one worker. So there is no scale out happening in smaller pieces of the package. And if you want to scale it out, like the way you have a huge table and you want to scale it out, what I would do is to separate the package itself into multiple packages and then distribute them with that version we currently have. Maybe in the future we get a integration services scale out that does the execute for parts of a package. Then I wouldn't care where the package or the part of the package is executed, and I just would start that package in scale out, and those parts would be distributed to the different workers. Any other questions? No other questions. Then I would say enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you for being here. And just 1 second. I need a photo, because almost every session I did in the past, I tried to make a photo. I will try to get everybody on it. I think I have to split it in 2 parts. Maybe I can see some hands or something like this on that side. Thank you. And here. Thank you very much. And there are 3 beer coupons. Everybody that just went here gets one. First 3. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.